Hello, good morning and good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for making the time today. It's really a pleasure to spend the next hour or so discussing with this great set of panelists about the future of cell and gene therapy. So I'll be the moderator today. I'm Luca Albrici. I'm the general manager and site head for the Cell and Gene Therapy Center of Excellence here at DGC Biologic, based in Milan. But today is really not about me, but it's really about the panelists that you see next to my big face here. I'm going to introduce them to you, even though they are big personality in this field. So let me start with chronological order. Certainly the one that I've been knowing for longer is Paola. Paola, I've met her in the early 2000s when she was coming back from her NIH experience, and I was finishing off my studies at the San Raffaele University, and she was starting as a tech transfer in the office there. And she has been working there for 13 years. In the meantime, we were able to close some nice partnership together. And then she moved in the last 5 years to try to contribute even more to this field, putting money in the system thanks to the Sofinova Teleton Fund, where she was really able to close and finance some very, very nice startups in even this tough period. So thank you, Paola, for being with us today. Second, again, following chronological order will be Miguel. So when I was making my baby steps in this field and start attending my first conference, Miguel was already a superstar here. He was already giving keynotes and seminars. Back at the time, I remember he was at the Excels, then he moved to Bone, to Luna. Now he started a new venture in Kiji Therapeutics, but today, I believe Miguel will also contribute not only from the classical company perspective, but he has made some important contribution in association like ARM, and he is also the president in charge, elected president for ISCT. So I'm really humbled to have you here and to hear all your perspectives that you can contribute to the table.
Thank you, Luca.
Scott has been also in this field for quite some time, starting in the academic settings at Cincinnati, at Indiana, and then moved to, I believe, was Florida Biologic at the time called, and then became Brammer, became Thermo, and then it closed down, unfortunately. But in the meantime, you moved to Orchard, where we have started working together, and we have set up what is now an approved product and ongoing some further expansion. And in the last few years, you have also contributed wider to this industry thanks to the work that Dark Horses is doing. That is certainly the #1 provider in terms of consulting in this industry. So thank you, Scott, for being with us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
And last but not least, what is the mind and brain behind AGC Biologics and the science, and the one who has helped many of the current developers to reach their current stage, an expert in vector, in cells, in analytics, and one of the most rated and influential women in the cell and gene therapy field. That's Juliana. Thanks again for being with us.
Thank you, Luca.
So again, thank you for being here. Today, we are gonna really navigate the economic challenges, regulatory and CMC aspect. But let's really start with what I believe is the elephant in the room, that are the economics factor. Every day I open my iPhone app for the shares and it's plus 10%, the next day is minus 10%. It's still clear that the situation out there, it's still very difficult. There are very positive news on several sides. Recently, I think the IPO of Cargo has been one of the largest deal or IPO recently made, if not the only one. There has been the outcome of CRISPR that was a great success in terms of safety for gene editing. And we also start seeing M&A being more common, with Orchard being recently acquired, Selectis doing some important deals. Forge just got acquired by Ajinomoto a couple of days ago. So M&A is finally starting to happen. At the same time, we see other companies that are struggling a little bit. We have seen Atara losing significant shares upon some clinical results. We have seen Beam going through some restructuring, Sangamo also putting some progress on hold. So there are ups and downs. So my first question, and maybe Scott, you see the industry very transversal. Can you tell us where we are, in where you see 2023 ending, and what's going to be the outlook for 24?
Yeah, I mean, I think you've captured it. I mean, 2023 has been a down year for most in the industry. And more than once I've heard people say the phrase, let's just stay alive until 25. I think we've seen a few upticks in the last 12 months, nothing that really took hold or had any real legs associated with it. I feel we're seeing another uptick right now in Q4. Like you mentioned, I mean, we've certainly seen some good size raises this year and some mergers. So I'd say overall, I'm cautiously optimistic that this uptick is going to carry us through the end of Q4 and hopefully into 2024. I think, overall, the industry is getting better than it has been. But we'll see what 2024 has to deliver. Hopefully it's better than 23.
Thank you, Scott. Miguel, when we chat, I know you have a positive twist to give in terms of what the outlook may be.
You're absolutely right, Luca. I think we need to have a positive perspective, but a positive perspective with a realistic touch of where we are. I mean, you said it, Scott mentioned it as well. The situation is tough out there. I mean, there's a macro environment that is not helping. In terms of the investment, there's a certain risk aversion. There's a certain caution to keep the cash for the things you own and need to continue to support. And that's not because lack of science. It's because of how the money is being deployed, even considering there are other alternatives to deploy your cash. Nevertheless, if we look at the field, there's two things that I would like us to reflect on. On one side, we're seeing a few glimpses of optimism, and people are finding alternative solutions instead of cash, finding partnerships, M&A, and you pointed it out, and I think it's really the resetting and finding alternative ways to remain alive and carry on your project. And on the other side, science is really strong, and we're getting a lot of new developments and approvals. We saw it today, as Javi. I mean, really a milestone, a turning point on gene editing, and in terms of the science and the technology behind this product. So I would say, be realistic, and understand that we have strong science, and that will eventually prevail.
Thanks, Miguel. Paula, you are on the investor side of things. What are you looking for? What advice can you give to company looking to raise some capital these days? What are you looking at?
Yes, well, thank you first of all for inviting us and for this discussion, which just to add up on what has already been said, I completely agree. The market is really challenging, so we see it in a multiple of ways. So of course, also fundraising is difficult for us and for our portfolio companies. But as Miguel said, I like to have a positive attitude. I strongly believe in the field and believe that there are scientific advancements that are quite impressive. The challenge that I see personally is, of course, the translation to the clinics, because nowadays, talking about advanced therapies, these are the very first time that they are reaching the clinic. So as you mentioned earlier, the Vertex CRISPR conditional approval today for the first CRISPR product on the market is really a milestone. So, you know, just looking at positive coming out, there are challenges. The bar is very high. Just to tell you that we recently launched a gene and cell therapy survey among different stakeholders. And the reaction that we got talking to different stakeholders, so meaning the industry, the academics, and the investors, was that gene and cell therapy is going to be applicable also for solid tumors and more complex disorders. So this is the trend that we are seeing, also looking at the survey and that were completed. But for sure, investors are putting a lot of attention in the safety. So irreversible changes to DNA, again, going back to translational, to clinical translation, is the key. So for sure, going forward with safer approaches is the way to go. So we need to prove safety overall, and of course the other hurdles, which is really affecting the advancement of these therapies, is the pricing, reimbursability, and adoption that is a characteristic of this industry. But we have to face it, and we as investors, our companies, need to face all these challenges since the beginning, together with manufacturing. So as you know very well, manufacturing is key for the advancement of these therapies. And so I would very much focus on being very diligent, focusing on investments that can really bring these advanced therapy towards clinical translation in the most successful way. So keeping in mind since the beginning that these are the hurdles that we have to face. And so start working on these sooner than later.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. And I think we will come back to the manufacturing in a bit. But before moving to the other topic, let's try to still deep dive a little bit on the economic part. It seems like funds have been raising money lately. Okay, so the money is there. It's probably kept for the portfolio company, but I believe the investors have changed. There's been a cultural change in how we were putting money until a couple of years ago and the way we put money. Scott, can you add some color or your perspective in how we, meaning everybody in this industry, have matured across this crisis?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's 100% true. You know, from my perspective, we've seen investors that have, you know, almost done a 180, just completely matured in the industry. They're better informed about the realities that happen with developing these products, and therefore they're taking a much closer look at things like CMC, supply chain, analytics, you know, before they sign on to hand over their money. I mean, you know, from our perspective, we do perform quite a fair amount of diligence in the field. And I've seen the timeframes to complete a diligence run, you know, move from a quick time frame of, you know, 3 to 4 weeks. We've seen that bump out more recently to several months or even longer. The investors just don't ask us to take a look under the hood anymore. They're asking us to take, you know, a deep dive, get in the weeds, under the bed sheets, whatever your preferred saying is, for all aspects of the company, whether that be, like I said, technical, CMC, you know, quality, facilities, strategy, across the board. They're asking for that. So in my opinion, it's more of a long-term, get it right the first time view that they seem to be taking. And that's, you know, I agreed, the money is there, but they're making much wiser, much more deliberate decisions now.
Thank you. And this is good, actually, speaking. This is where we should all be a little bit more cautious in doing it right and be realistic in everybody's business plan. Investor, management, CDMO, and everybody needs to stick to the plan a little bit better in order to provide a good growth of this industry. So I think that, together with some clinical data that is continuing very nicely, interest rate that may decrease over time, will allow to see some better financing over time. Otherwise, we know that there's going to be some barrier in 2024, 25, where things and companies can no longer expand their cash runaway. So, but I'm sure that by that, the situation would have improved. So that said, let's switch a little bit the focus more around the manufacturing. I think what we have seen is that there has been a drop or a stabilization of the demand. This is not necessarily true for all the single subgroups of what cell and gene therapy is about, but certainly vectors has stabilized, especially on AAV over time. But at the same, there's been a significant growth of capacity. Okay, most CDMO has expanded. Most companies have internalized manufacturing. So we are in a very different scenario that we were until a couple of years ago. I stay with you, Scott, to maybe comment a little bit on capacity versus, I don't know, like real service, real quality delivered.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I don't think my recommendations have really changed over the years with regards to, questions like this. A product has a higher likelihood to get into IND and later phase studies when the work is front loaded, i.e., you do your PD up front and you get it right, moving further down towards different phase trials. I mean, that includes, it means choosing the correct CDMO to partner with, ensuring that your PD is done correctly, that you've optimized for things like not only titer, but residuals. And I mentioned residuals because a lot of people do only optimize for titer and have to deal with the residuals down the road. But I completely understand that funding relies on getting to that next stage, and therefore speed is important. But as we mentioned previously, investors are more savvy now and they're more informed. And a poorly developed asset isn't a hard one to pick out of the group. So, do your work on the front end. It's a little bit more time and maybe a little bit more money up front, but it's going to pay its dividends in the long run.
Thank you. Yes, that's probably very hard when you are short of money to actually do the front end. So this is not the best time to actually be able to perform that, but I totally share your vision. Miguel, capacity and capabilities in this industry. I was mentioning that probably it's not really homogeneous. There are emerging technology where probably we are still very short of good manufacturing site of expertise. There are more mature technology where that is an excess. What is your view on technology and capabilities around?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, and what Scott said and you mentioned is it's always important, and I think we need to reinforce it. One should think what's going to be the end already from the beginning and should try to do it. And if you don't do it, at least plan to do it and think what's going to be needed along the way. The technologies are evolving, and I think we're going to see cell and gene therapy kind of with a pocket of autologous, and then a large amount of allogeneic, and then gene editing in vivo and ex vivo. And then within this, we're seeing significant developments that will have implication in manufacturing. One, for instance, is the time and the quality of products like CAR-T. I mean, we started it, and what made this field what it is today was the transformational clinical data that we saw first. But now in manufacturing, we're starting to go shorter times and pay more attention to the exhaustion of the cells, i.e. the quality of the cells. And we see papers coming out in terms of 4-day manufacturing, 3-day manufacturing. We're also seeing discussions about the strategy of manufacturing. Should we do it centralized? Should we own it centralized and do it decentralized, and obviously that plays into the different buckets that I said before. Another element of development is the gene delivery. There's a lot of AAV work being done and being solidified, but we've seen also alternatives in terms of how the gene is delivered, playing with toxicity often on target, playing also with immunogenicity. So that is going to be another bucket of changes that we're going to see. And then final, and we'll see some of the regulatory implications of this also down the road. And we see also something else, which is the sourcing of the cells. And we will be relying more and more on donor independent or nearly independent sourcing, like going to iPSC. So there are different signals there of evolution, maturity, and need for development. And I think I go back to the beginning. One needs to look at the technology that best fits your value proposition and develop in partnership, and really then anticipate what's going to be all the way down the road your CMC needs. So it's the ability for us to talk about all of these today shows the evolution that has been over the last 10 years in the field. There were few options, there were challenging steps. But now, today, we have multiple opportunities and we have to choose between them. That is the technological maturation of the field, I would say.
Yep, thank you, Miguel. That's certainly, it's getting more option, more technology. On the CDMO side that I represent here, it's very hard sometimes to understand what's going to be the future and the area where we should focus or not, because we cannot be 100% and leading in every single technology. So there are some decisions that we should make every day on where to focus.
I would say that developers and CDMOs is like the two to tango. I mean, you need to sync it, because I think partnership, I mean, no company should do things on their own. The question is, what does it need to partner with, and which CDMO and for what, depending on the value proposition, needs to go. And that partnership is key in terms of developing the field. It's not always matched, and that's what you're mentioning. But as we grow and as the field grows, it will become easier.
For sure, for sure. Paola, linking to that, what are the aspects that you look at when you choose your partner for manufacturing?
Yeah, actually, so I'll start saying that I'm echoing fully, what Scott and Miguel just said. So Scott saying, you have to deploy your money wisely, and I mean, it's a capital intensive effort, but if you do it the right way since the beginning, you spend your money wisely, you get where you need to get. And Miguel, of course, echoing him as well, saying you have to choose the right partner. So, which is actually the question that you raised. I think that looking at gene and cell therapy companies and looking at how the budget distribution is really built, is a lot of the capital goes to CMC and manufacturing efforts. So for us and for our portfolio companies, the decision on which CDMO is the right partner for the company is truly strategic. And it's a decision that goes long term, because it's not only for the non-human primate study that you're going to run first, but it's also to move to the clinic and potentially also for commercial efforts. So, what we do, we spend a lot of time in identifying the right partner. I can tell you that. So we have been doing a lot of homework on that respect, and also fitting and understanding the needs of the specific gene therapy products that each company is developing. So we really look at quality. So going back again on the purity aspects, that for sure what is the most relevant, looking, of course, mostly at in vivo gene therapies, for instance. And then the scalability issue, as I said, earlier, we need to identify a partner that can move forward and with us and with the development phases. For sure, there are the major challenges that our portfolio company have to face. First of all, identify a partner that has a relevant slot in the relevant timing. So, for us, this is a crucial and, really huge problem sometimes, because you have to fit your timeline for development together with the partner. So, as you know, that is challenging. And then again,
is this the case, Paola? Sorry to interrupt, but this is something that we were certainly very used to here until a few years ago. Do you believe this is still the case, or it?
Well, you have to plan it in advance. So what we always try to do is to plan in advance and make sure that that is no longer a relevant hurdle. But I can tell you the planning needs to be done appropriately. So for sure, there are more players around today than there were before. So, and increasing manufacturing capabilities for sure. But then you have to identify the right site, and depending also on the geography that you are. So, I think that still there are a number of factors that you need to identify, study, and work around. And last but not least is the certification. So really working with a partner that has all the relevant certifications to move forward, because regulators are going to ask us. And we need to identify that and make sure that the partner has. And, again, this might seem like not a relevant problem anymore nowadays, but still we identify that this may be a challenge and an issue, looking at programs that have been accelerated in a more academic, let's say, setting. So for sure, the due diligence on the CDMO is important. And one other aspect that I truly believe is what makes things work at the long run is identifying internally a champion that can really move forward, and it's sort of a super project manager, that can really facilitate the communication and the advancement. And so being there for the companies that need to advance their therapies. So this is also something that we are very much looking into, the partner that we choose for our portfolio companies' development efforts.
Thank you. Yeah, defining the long-term strategy is certainly very key. Sometimes I must say we enter in some weird discussion where we are discussing about 2,000 liters, and then the worst statement end up with a 10 liters. So it's it's really around.
That is challenging on both sides, right?
Yes, so it's like we always need to figure out what's going to be the long term, but in the meantime, don't forget to trip on our feet, because we are looking just 10 miles ahead. But so I would like to remain on this and remain on what we as manufacturer can do. I believe you have been around lately. You hear just one common theme, that is platform, and it gets even a little bit annoying these days. Also because everybody's pretty much claiming the same thing. And Scott, what is your experience on platform?
Yeah, I mean, just to reemphasize what Paula said, you need to choose somebody that's going to be a partner, a CMO that's going to partner with you. And, like you said, platform process is thrown around a lot these days, especially as we see, the field just get a greater number of CMOs in it. There's a lot of promises that go with that, platform process. They can plug your transgene into their process and voila, you have product. And it's just, in reality, it's not that easy. In reality, a platform process, at least in my opinion, means that, they've invested in a set of raw materials, i.e. plasmids. They've invested in equipment, and they can show you some data. A lot of times it's GFP data, that they can make a product of decent titer. And, some of that data has no bearing on your product, because every transgene is going to be different. So my recommendation is don't buy into a company telling you that, they have a platform process and they can leverage it to get you into GMP in short order. Instead, turn it around and ask what their plans are to optimize your asset or your product in their manufacturing process. I mean, things that I would expect to hear from a CMO are going to be that they'd like to optimize your plasmid ratios. They'd like to optimize the number of cells being used, the harvest times, the formulations, the scale. You know, on the downstream process, the chromatography resins, how are they purifying? How are they, for AAV, optimizing, you know, an empty full ratio? Things like that. You know, if they simply want you to plug and play your asset, that's to make it easier for them. You know, I'd say that that's probably not a partner, and you might want to start looking elsewhere on it.
Yes, no, I agree your view, but Julia, you have been developing some platforms here. Tell us the other side of the coin. That I don't think is necessary in disagreement to that, but I believe that what you said is fair, but then the customer needs to be aware and willing to spend some time in doing that. So this is where, again, realistic timelines and plans come into play. But Julie, please, what is the AGC view on this?
Yeah, in AGC, as you said, we did a lot of work in order to have a strong knowledge about processes and how develop a process, starting from the development of small scale that are so useful for all the preliminary work that you need before going GMP, but also at the end of the clinical phases are so useful for the IPC studies and for all the studies that can support you before the marketing and PPQ campaigns. So for sure, in AGC, we develop knowledge and platform that are more simple from a certain point of view for lentiviral vectors, because you have some important aspect that remain constant respect to AAV, in which when you change serotype, you change completely the behavior of the vector during the production and the downstream phase. So for us, the concept of platform is the concept to have strong knowledge in what we can do, and based on the gene of interest, restarting development with some feasibility studies and verify that what we developed, as Scott said, using GFP is applicable with minor changes in for the gene of interest of the customer, of the developer. And the same for analytics. What we are doing and what we did is develop some assay that we can apply on different transgenes. So using common sequences or developing something that is universal for residuals in order to set and check.
Is that an open question?
No, it's more for Juliana, but please go ahead.
No, yeah. Thank you, Luca. Yeah, this is another important point. What we want usually to do is to offer a sort of feasibility study in which we can share can share with the client the starting point and verify if what we are doing fit with the request and with the final scope of the client. For Lenti, we are, as I said, we are stronger in in offer titers, because we are sure that our platform work according a certain level of potency. But for AV, what we usually offer is something like a feasibility. Work together and verify after some run at small scale where we are, and if we are ready to scale up and to go ahead with the GMP.
Yes, a little engagement before wedding. Miguel.
Yeah, no, I just want to resonate to what Juliana said, because I mean, a platform is one of those buzzwords currently, but it actually, what it means is optimization across different opportunities of the learnings. And when she was talking, it came to me two perspectives. So, and again, I think Scott will probably resonate to this as well from the advice point of view, which is, since you have the opportunity to work with different different projects, you will be able to, in a way, take the learnings and the experience and really optimize what you're doing. Always tailoring, always doing feasibility, but really going across. And I think the other side of the coin of that is for instance what Peter Marks and Nicole Verduma are trying to come from the regulatory side. They will see different approaches, different projects that have some aspects in common, and they will be able to do a platform approach, i.e., take learning from one and apply to the others. So platform is optimize your project across different opportunities by the learnings and the commonalities between the two. CDMOs are in a particularly good situation to help developers on that. Regulators are in a particularly good situation to assess across. Now, there's elements of know-how to preserve, elements of IP to preserve. Obviously, all of that is important and links to the responsibility you mentioned, but it's that cross-fertilization that will help the field, and that's how I see platform. There's also similarity in a single company where you are able to do multiple indications, which again is another optimization. But it is really the CDMO and the regulatory that excites me, because it's a signal of maturity of the field where there's some opportunities for standardization and cross-fertilization between projects.
Thanks, Miguel. And indeed, we are jumping and we don't have a lot of time, so I will really ask you guys for a quick answer. It's about regulators. So everybody's evolving, but I think regulators have evolved significantly over time. Scott, you are close to the FDA. Your view into how they are changing over time?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, we have seen the FDA change. I think, you know, with COVID and some of the political things that were happening in the U.S. I mean, we saw the agency lose a lot of their longtime, you know, older employees that really helped cell and gene therapy through the field and held our hands to get the products to approval. So, you know, what we're seeing now is, you know, you can get some different comments for this same question from reviewers. They're hiring in new reviewers. They're younger. They don't have the experience. They're coming from different fields, different backgrounds. And so there is that you know, difference that we're seeing. You know, I think from a high level, my recommendations are a couple-fold. You know, when you have a product in front of the agency, get as much feedback from regulators as you possibly can about your program, about your strategy. You know, word your questions so that you get good answers. If you ask general questions, you're going to get general answers. So be very careful along those ends. You know, ask your questions wisely. But yeah, I mean, I think, you know, hopefully this will stabilize over the course of the next couple of years as we get more experience with these regulators and that. But yeah, it's what we have to deal with right now. I think the other thing is, you know, and I don't mean this to be a plug, but, you know, consultants do see a lot of different things across the field. We have a lot of interactions with the regulators. So, you know, utilize consultants. They're going to have that experience and can help you through that process.
Thank you, Scott. Let's close off with Julie. You have been interacting with the EMA and IFA for 20 years and recently also with the FDA. Can you talk a bit on how things have changed throughout the 20 years and what you see as difference between the different authorities and what kind of attitude or partnership are they putting in place with us, the developer and the manufacturer?
Yeah, thank you for this question. Actually, we are in the middle of an FDA inspection for the approval of 2 products. And we have FDA team, 6 inspectors here in AGC in these days. And what I can say, I don't know how this inspection will finish, and I for sure I cannot disclose nothing. But my feeling during this inspection is that the inspectors are very open, very collaborative, very knowledge, they want to build in this field with us. So for sure, they are here to inspect, to verify if we are doing the things according to the rules, but with a very open mind. So they are very open to listen, to understand the difficulties, and found together a way in order to have this product approved. For sure, I want to underline that there are some differences between EMA that use Italian authority to authorize us for the market, respect FDA. The approach is a little bit different. EMA conducted a more technical scientific inspection. FDA is conducting an inspection more with the scope to verify that we are compliant to US rules. But however, both authorities are very collaborative, and our feeling that we are together in order to have this product approved for the market and to go with this product to the patients.
Thank you, Julie. We have literally a couple of minutes for answering the question. There are two selected here that I would really like to ask. The first one is how many patients can be treated per year for a particular gene therapy product? This is pretty vague. Scott, do you want to give it a try, even though it's probably it will start with it depends?
Yeah, I mean, it completely depends, right? It depends on what vector system and what indication you're going into. I mean, I've seen as little as, you know, one lot per patient. And I've seen as, you know, I mean, some of the CAR Ts and some of the other indications, you can get pretty high numbers depending on the scale that you make. So yeah, that's a really open-ended question.
Thanks, Scott. And the other question, I believe it's for Juliana. It's really, people here have little time and money. So when looking at CDMO, they're looking to save both of them. So tell us how they can achieve that in your view, and especially again, going back to what your experience is in AGC.
Yeah, for sure. What is important is to choose a experienced CDMO. This permits you to save time and money. Sometime, and what is important is that this CDMO can offer you, as I said before, but I want to reiterate this concept, validated small scale process that permit you to verify the performance of this before the scale up and the GMP application. I think this is the most important thing.
Thanks, Julie. And with this, we are 1 minute over. I thank you all for the participation. I'm sure you will find it educational. You can reach out through the host for any type of follow-ups to any of our panelists that the system will coordinate. And with that said, thanks a lot to all the panelists and for all of you to making time and participating to this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Luca, for the
Thank
opportunity.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.